Awesome. Guy McPherson. Look at you. Oh, I hear those beautiful birds chirping. That's sweet. So,
yes,
Dr. Guy is nice enough to help me out with my spiritual leadership term paper. And I've pushed and pulled with my professors to wrangle this thing as close to the bone as I can. But you know, they just want everything to be happy. They want everything to be good. We have to see future, you know, and that is sort of the core of the struggle that I see, you know, all of us going through, that are compelled to alert the others as to the different levels that all of this is being perpetrated. You're the scientist, I'm an artist, so for me everything is conceptual, everything is empathic, and I do, in the time that I've known you, I've identified those qualities in you. Whether your academic life, you know, had taken your path in a different direction, now I see the emergence of what I identify as a transformational leader. And I know you well enough to know that the accent on leader is certainly not your choice, and nor is it mine, for that matter. And so, you know, one of the things that I like to point out is that it isn't our choice to be leaders, to be spiritual leaders. It's something that your intuitive, your spirit, your shaman, if you will, your wounded healer has compelled you to do. And while any other, you know, role is acceptable, for some reason, the spiritual warrior is an oxymoron. And so it presents us with exactly that, you know, incongruent mindsets, incongruent thought processes, because we, you know, have to exist on a shifting platform, and the second you begin to get your bearings, it alters. So it's fluid. You know, it's like the ultimate, you know, would be you're on a lifeboat and you're sort of, you know, standing up on a surfboard, if you will, and just kind of letting each wave hit you and staying in the moment of that, changing your approach with every hit of the wave, if you will. So the questions that I sent you ahead of time so that you could contemplate, and yeah, this is an interview on you, even though I'm talking. But you know, the thing that hurts us all for you, those of us that love you and understand that you're not anything but who you present yourself to be, and quite deeper than the average person would even perceive. And I think that's why you have so many women followers, if you will. Oh my gosh, followers. But admirers. And I don't mean that, you know, in, oh, he's so cute. Yeah, you're cute. Get over it. But I think that it's the feminine aspect of your nature that is, you know, compelling this forward in you. You know, whereas for me, it's the masculine in me that's compelling me forward, you know. So I think that there's a larger conversation here. And as much as, you know, spiritual is a hot button for both of us, it's an alchemical process. You know, this is an alchemical process that we're merging, you know, that we're merging into this arena of environmentalism and transformational leadership.
Well, I have always communicated better with females than with males since I was just a child, in fact. So it's not a surprise to me that women continue to connect better with the information I present than men do. And one part of that is that when you're male and you're in a system dominated by patriarchy, you don't necessarily want to hear that. And
yeah.
And when you're a woman and you've been oppressed your entire life by a patriarchal system, then somebody saying that, especially a white male saying that, sort of makes a lot of sense.
Yep.
And
well, that's, you know, in approaching this, tilt this up a little bit. In approaching this conversation, I wanted to take the opportunity to touch upon, you know, a lot of these different layers that normally aren't really discussed in environmental activism. But I think that the wounded healer archetype, you know, the more and more you reach in and discover the personal stories of each activist, and that's another hot button topic. Okay, so advocate. Let's just be politically correct. I think you begin to see, you know, the commonalities, and it's motivated. The authentic, transformational, spiritual leadership model incorporates and should incorporate authenticity as being one of its, you know, more important dimensions, because and also, you know, this is something that you unfortunately have had to experience, is that the second, you know, it's you know, in my opinion, it's that Jesus Christ syndrome where, you know, put Jesus on the cross and, you know, put him up on the pedestal until he talks out of both sides of his mouth, and then pull him down and, you know, throw him up on the cross and crucify him. So, you know, and so here's another, you know, oxymoron, because it's sort of like, to stay fluid, right, on a shifting platform, you unfortunately do say one thing one day, not you personally, but, you know, as an advocate, you are forced to say one thing one day and then another thing seemingly another. And with the accelerated rate that things are happening, I mean, just in the last few weeks, my Lord. And then of course we can't help but notice that the attitudes in people in the last 2 weeks have changed dramatically. It's like it's starting to really sink in. And those of us that have been trying to awaken people are so tired and so sad and depressed, you know?
yes, I do know very well. And it's a politically disparaging remark for somebody who changes their mind. I think that's incredible, actually, that we disparage somebody. We call them a flip-flopper if they change their mind in an issue. I changed my mind in light of new evidence, in light of new information. And I think to not change your mind, to be unwilling to change your mind in the light of new information, should really make you question what's going on with that person. If they're so entrenched in their views that they are unwilling to change the way they view the world when they encounter new information, then what is it going to take?
Well, exactly. And that's the scary part. And that leads me kind of to my next question or thought. You know, for myself, the thing that I get thrown at me a lot is, you're not spiritual. You're so dark. You know, here I am a shaman, and I'm like, oh, okay, what? I mean, I could have a whole conversation as to the alchemical, you know, concept of that, and in defense of myself. But you know, I don't choose to often engage in that conversation, and neither do you, and I see that because it's a waste of time. Sometimes we have to remind people, and so subsequently we pick and choose when we choose to reveal, when we choose to, answer to detractors, or decide whether someone's genuinely questioning versus trying to, troll and tear us down. And this is another area that filters into this too, is that with the information being so instantaneous, whether it's what a report is released on the other side of the world, or what, some reporter says about you, it's like in your face that minute, so you're constantly, on a personal level, deciding how to respond, picking and choosing your battles, what is important to address, what isn't important to address. And then, of course, that raises, as I started to preface, how do we stay ethical? How do we stay ethical when we're dealing with resistance that will literally take a dagger and slice you up, metaphorically?
Right. So there's a lot there. First of all, to follow up on that notion of changing my opinion, changing my view in light of new information, for me, research is a nonstop activity. I constantly seek reliable sources. I constantly compare new information with existing knowledge. There are things we know that are pretty immutable, that are unchanged. It would take an enormous amount of evidence at this point, for example, to counter the laws of thermodynamics, to counter our deep understanding of the way the universe works. I'm open to that evidence, but it'll have to be pretty impressive. Likewise, how to maintain an ethical stance in light of extreme resistance. And that's what we're doing here, is we are resisting a dominant paradigm that is entrenched and overwhelming. It is essentially impossible. If this were a game or a sport or a battle, it would be essentially impossible to win. Knowing that life is short and that my life is irrelevant allows me to fight the battles that cannot be won. Contrary to what I'm often told, knowledge that our stay in this mortal coil is brief doesn't lead me to hedonism. It leads me to seeking out evidence and remaining true to my own character.
And you do that very well.
That has nothing to do with partying like it's 1999.
Yeah, sorry, you do that very well. I just wanted to make sure that you know that the people that support you because we know that you wake up every day and you research. You wake up every day and you're striving to get to the next level of communication with people, the next level of responsibility. And yeah, the hedonism thing is an interesting choice. And I try not to be judgmental, but it's kind of hard. But in observing that choice and being, that I understand the multi-dimensions, there's really, there's no value in hedonism, because the whole purpose of our incarnations is to be of service to the planet, to our fellow man, and to thine own self be true, absolutely. But, ultimately, we're not here for ourselves. We're here to learn, and we're here to share. And fortunately, if we don't go out of this lifetime in a higher resonancy, a higher place of responsibility, we're unfortunately, doomed to repeat this again. And so the whole motivation becomes exactly that. Stay focused. Stay focused on what you know yourself to be, and what your gift is to share.
Right. And it's interesting. I've thought a lot about what leads a person to a life of service. What causes a person to commit themselves to something beyond their own self? What causes me to be as concerned about evidence, as concerned about other human beings, as concerned about non-human species as I am about my own life? And I haven't been able to identify any attribute or set of attributes that makes somebody commit to a life of service, but we see it all around us. Those of us who are committed to lives of service see others who are doing the same. And I don't know what caused it within me, but it's there. I think I probably either was born with it or came upon the realization pretty early in life when I came home from the first week or two at school in first grade. They didn't have kindergarten where I grew up. I took home the Dick and Jane readers, the little primers for reading. I remember those. and I showed one to my sister, who was 4.5 years old, and I asked her, "What's this?" And she said, "Is it a dog?" And I said, "No, it's Spot." And I was already frustrated. So I'm a week or two into learning how to read, and I'm frustrated that my sister, who's just over 4 years old, can't herself identify these animals that are important to me by name. Of course she can't. She's never seen them before. So I was trying to teach her within literally days of starting to go to school. Where does that come from? I don't know, but it's within me. Teaching is something that is within me. Yeah. And there's similar pieces of character, there's similar attributes in each of us, and identifying and accentuating those is admittedly challenging, but I think that everybody has some form of that within them.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I see that in a different context because of my belief in the multi-dimensions and multiple life experiences here. But so some of my explanations for those questions are of my own. I can pin a reasoning on why I'm that way. But I mean, if you want to stay really basic and clinical, I mean, I think that in your biography, I think it's pretty obvious that you had an experience that brought about levels of alienation and certainly a love of nature. But I think that some of the experiences that you perhaps witnessed in your young life are the very things that led you to want to prevent others from those like shocks to reality. You know what I mean? At such a young age, when you're forced to deal with information that is way beyond your scope of comprehension, those things relate into our psyche as traumatic experiences. And I think that the alienation thing only allows, and I just mean being sort of in a place where you're not exposed to a lot of outside information, and it's just sort of encapsulated in the reality that you were shown. I think that also leads to to more early self-awareness because you're kind of in your mind a lot. I mean, I know for myself, I had no friends. I had no children to play with. So it was either adults or I was in my mind and my imagination, you know, and I think that if you are, you know, born within that context and an exceptionally empathetic person, which I identify you to be very sensitive, you know, I think that that's kind of the recipe for this. And then, you know, it just continues to be stroked on environmental experiences, you know.
Yes, and I think that's something that is increasingly difficult to find in contemporary society. When, you know, I grew up in a really small town with not very many other human beings at all. And what did you do? Well, it was northern Idaho, so in the winter you spent all your time indoors because it was snowing and cold and miserable outside. And in the other seasons, you'd spend a lot of time outdoors because that's what was there. And in both cases, I was by myself or in a very small group of people. And so I'm reading a lot, as you just described. I was in my head. I spent a lot of time in my head. And so I think kids these days don't get that. Kids these days are pushed to always be doing something, to always be at soccer practice or chess club or one of 1,000 other things. And they're always connected. Right? Yeah. They always have the smartphones going. They always got the thumbs going on the smartphone.
Distraction.
There's no time to just sit there and let the world overwhelm you. I remember when I was a child, I would go out almost every night in the summertime and lie on my back in the grass on our yard and look up at the sky.
I did the same exact thing. And just stare at the sky.
I would just bawl my eyes out.
Oh my God, you are telling my story.
It was incredible because I felt so insignificant.
I know.
Well, these days nobody gets that when they're a kid.
I know.
They don't even know that there are stars in the sky because they don't live in cities to begin with. And they don't spend any time by themselves and letting the overwhelming loneliness that is life wash over them.
Yeah, I agree.
That's an amazing thing to experience. I don't think you can have moments of profound. I don't think you can have moments of profound joy unless you also have moments of profound sadness.
Absolutely.
And if you don't come to grips with the complete loneliness of being a completely insignificant, irrelevant human being in this realm, then you're missing out on something.
Yeah, I completely agree. Well, my inner dialogue, though, when I laid there on the grass looking at the sky and cried, was I needed to understand what this place was. That was always my overriding. I laid there crying so deeply, going to myself, I need to know what this place is. It just, you know, so we're compelled by different you know, thoughts, things that are the instigating, you know, defining one core, you know, issue. But this is why I wanted to have this conversation, is that I do think that there is a pattern, you know, amongst many of us that this is what we've experienced, you know, and I mean, this is not a conversation for this moment, but it almost makes me wonder on an even larger scale what that's all about, you know? I mean, you're telling me the exact same story that I tell people as an anecdote, you know? And yet, when I first met you, it was the exact same connection. I could see in you myself on such a deep level, to the point where even when you're not on Facebook, you know, I can sort of feel the internal, you know, combustion going on, and I wonder if he's being affected by this, because then I'm looking at what I'm being affected by that week. That's why I think it's interesting to be able to analyze, you know, the internet, to just see on a week to week when information is released, how the comments, does the anger come in? You know what I mean? Are people combative? Are people depressed? Are people sarcastic? It's real insight into the collective consciousness for sure.
It is. It certainly is. This conversation brings to mind the final words of Joseph Campbell's 1949 book, The Hero with a Thousand Faces. And nobody wrote more about the tragedy of heroism and the place of heroism in our culture than Joseph Campbell. And in that book, probably his best known, he writes, and so every one of us shares the supreme ordeal, carries the cross of the Redeemer, not in the bright moments of his tribe's great victories, but in the silences of his personal despair. And he was writing at a time and from a perspective that personal despair was allowed to wash over you. You really couldn't help it.
Yeah.
You were engaged in the world. You could see the world. This is right after World War II. And it was obvious that there were moments of personal despair that lead to heroic acts. And now I'm not sure we have much of that anymore. I think that we're really good at turning away from our own sadness, loneliness, despair, the sense that ultimately we're pretty alone in this world. And it's easy for us to turn away from that because we have all these digital devices to stay connected with, and the television is always on, and we have all this nonsense in our lives that makes it easy to turn away. And I think that comes at a cost. I think that cost is the cost of true joy in knowing what that means.
Well, two things hit me that I find really interesting is that instead of the hedonism, in light of what we know, and I see you doing this, and you say it all the time, do what you love, and of course that is the answer. And doing what you love is simply the way I see us, concluding all of whatever this civilization is doing right now. It's constantly changing, but as to what direction it's going to go in, and But I think that being able to just sit still and be able to take in that which led us here, that personal reflection, that time to watch the ladybug just walk across the blade of grass, to view how the birds, drink water out of whatever, some drops in a cup that you left laying on the picnic table. But just the simplicity of it all, and the reflection. I sadly don't think that that's what's going to happen, but if we were to have any sort of experience that would be worthy at this point, that would certainly be it. The other thing I wanted to go ahead.
I think we have experiences that are meaningful and authentic regularly, and I think you just described one.
Yeah.
Having that relationship with another organism, being able to observe another organism do the most amazing, miraculous thing, which is to walk across a blade of grass and live. That's an incredible privilege for us to have. And if we can just focus on those moments, those truly inspiring, awesome moments when we get to observe other life, that's astonishing. As Derek Jensen says, we're really, really fucked, and life is really, really good.
Yeah.
and if you can't hold those two thoughts in your head at the same time, then you're missing out. Because yes, some things are really, really fucked. And guess what? Life is unbelievably, wonderfully awesome.
Well, the other thing I had forgotten, because I talk to you and I get all full of things to say, but the most interesting thing that I found that came out recently was an article by a PhD, and I don't have it handy. I didn't know that I was really going to talk about it, but just really expressing about the fact that there aren't enough anti-authoritarians, which I find, kind of a beautiful thing to sort of usher into this as well, because we're taught from an early age that, being an anti-authoritarian, that's not good, And yet, it's this very moment that the activists and the advocates are becoming the heroes, the hero anti-authoritarians who we need. And we desperately need people who are willing to. And I know it's scary right now because the laws have changed to such a degree that they've got us corralled in, and who knows where hammers are going to come down. But it is so vital that we continue to push in nonviolent ways to speak the truth. And that ultimately I'd rather conclude, in a spotlight of truth than to party down in the shadows, I don't know.
Yes, there is the anti-authoritarian in all of us. There is the authoritarian in all of us. Returning to the notion of a life of service, yet again, questioning authority. Ben Franklin said, "It is the first responsibility of every citizen." Notice he called them citizens, not consumers. Mm-hmm. It is the first responsibility of every citizen to question authority. He didn't say it's the fourth thing they should be thinking about. Yeah. He said it's the first responsibility of every citizen. Yeah. I feel like we're really at a breaking point here. You brought up activists and people who are trying to do something counter to the status quo. And I think we're at a moment that Frank Zappa described years ago. The illusion of freedom will continue as long as it's profitable to continue the illusion. At the point where the illusion becomes too expensive to maintain, they will just take down the scenery, they will pull back the curtains, they will move the tables and chairs out of the way, and you will see the brick wall at the back of the theater. I think we're there.
Oh, yeah. I think we're definitely there.
I think the authorities have lost their authority.
Oh, yeah.
I think increasingly people are saying, wait a minute, this is freedom? This seems a lot like fascism to me.
Yeah.
This isn't what I hired on for.
It's not even about anything political. I mean, I find myself pulling away from that more and more as far as sides. There's only one thing going on here, and if you're paying attention, you just described it. The scenery is being changed, and all of us insignificant extras are being told to stand over at craft service and fill up and get ready for the next scene because it's going to be very grueling. You're going to be working nonstop and you're going to be standing for long periods of time. Yeah, I'm being called back to my days on set. Absolutely. But, I'll kind of conclude with this because I know you've got lots of stuff to do. But one of my questions is, in absence of payoff, what is the motivator? And I believe I've heard you answer that, maybe not directly, but I wanted to leave with that.
Well, two things. I wrote an essay at my website, Nature Bats Last. It's probably been more than a year now, and the essay was called Only Love Remains.
I remember it.
Only love remains. It doesn't have anything to do with money. So in the absence of a payoff, the motivator is twofold for me. Character is one. We've already talked about that. In the end, what we have is character. But in the end, what we have is the ability to face the mirror every day and say, I didn't capitulate to the people running the show. I sought a better path. I sought a path that provided service beyond myself. So for me, that's what character is about. And then love. Bill Hicks, more than 20 years ago, Bill Hicks in his great routine, it's all a ride. It's all just a ride. In the end, what you can capitulate to is fear or love. And if you buy into fear, if you're willing to accept fear, then you're going to need a lot of locks and a lot of guns. And we don't need that. In the end, only love remains.
Oh, that's very well said.
And that love, I think, is rooted in our character and a life of service.
Yeah, I agree. Well, and that's why we love you. So there you go. How perfect is that? Full circle. Well, Guy, thank you so much. You know, you are a very important person to me and to so many. And I am very honored to be able to have this moment to speak with you and see your beautiful face in live, at least on Skype, you know, and share this side of you.
Thank you, Wendy.
No, I want to share.
Thank you, Wendy. It's always a pleasure. It really is.
I want to share this side of you, though, because it hurts us when people don't understand how fabulous, you know, your intentions are, and I don't think people really realize the sacrifice that one makes in so many ways, and the endurance, and trying to stay motivated, you know, in light of all that. So you do an amazing job. Thank you so much for your service.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that.
All right, my friend. Love you. I'm shutting this off here.